In this chapter, we're going to be looking at nationalism and empires in Europe. And a lot of this is going to be kind of a prelude to World War I. We're going to look at things that really kind of set the stage for the First World War. And we'll start by looking at how we developed a German nation out of what originally used to be the nation of Prussia. But before we can do that, we need to look at what set the stage or made it possible to have German unification. And so our learning objectives, first we want to explain how the Crimean War made a German nation possible. And then we will explain how Bismarck built a powerful German state. So we start here by looking at the breakdown of the concert of Europe. So we have to think back to when we talked about Napoleon Bonaparte earlier in the year. Napoleon Bonaparte, after he had had his last battle at Waterloo and he was defeated, the European powers gathered at the Congress of Vienna, and they agreed to several things to try to help keep the peace in the future and to restore the old hereditary monarchs that had ruled in Europe. And part of this goal of keeping the peace was they developed what was known as the Concert of Europe. And so what ends up happening is we see both Germany and Italy being unified as independent nations by 1871. But this wasn't possible without the Crimean War. The Crimean War was rooted in a conflict between Russia and the Ottoman Empire. Now, Russia was a giant empire itself, had many non-Russian peoples that had been overtaken by the Russians and had become part of this giant empire. At the same time, the Ottoman Empire was also a multi-ethnic empire ruled by the Ottoman Turks, based out of Constantinople in what is modern-day Turkey. But they ruled a large part of area around the Mediterranean Sea, and so including the Balkans and southeastern Europe. But by the time that we're getting into the mid-1800s, the Ottoman Empire is in decline. It's growing weak. It's having a hard time really maintaining control over much of its empire. And we'll look more at this later in the chapter, but it kind of becomes known as the sick man of Europe. And so Russia wanted to expand into the Balkans so that it could have access to the Dardanelles and to the Mediterranean Sea, giving it the naval might to be the great power in Eastern Europe. So Russia invaded the Turkish Balkan provinces of Moldavia and Wallachia, and the Ottomans declared war on Russia. Great Britain and France, fearing Russia's ambitions, allied with the Ottomans, and the Crimean War was on. Heavy losses caused the Russians to seek peace. In the Treaty of Paris of 1856, Russia agreed to have Moldavia and Wallachia placed under the protection of all of the great powers. The Crimean War destroyed the concert of Europe. Austria and Russia had been the two powers maintaining the order, but now they were enemies because Austria had not supported Russia in the Crimean War due to its own interest in the Balkans. So Russia withdrew from European affairs for the next 20 years. Austria had no friends among the great powers, and Germany and Italy could now unify as there was really no one to stop them from unifying. So now this brings us to Otto von Bismarck, the Chancellor of Prussia. And he led the drive to unite the German states, but under Prussian rule. And he was the master of what we refer to as realpolitik, or realistic policies based on the needs of the state. After creating a powerful military, He was ready to pursue an aggressive foreign policy, and over the next decade, he would lead Prussia into 3 wars, each one increased Prussian power and paved the way for German unity. So now we'll look at the Austro-Prussian War. So in 1866, Bismarck created an excuse to attack Austria. The Austro-Prussian War lasted only 7 weeks. Afterwards, Prussia annexed several North German states. In France, the Prussian victory angered Napoleon III. A growing rivalry led to the Franco-Prussian War of 1870. So now we'll look at the Franco-Prussian War. Bismarck made the situation worse when he wrote and released to the press a telegram about a meeting between William I of Prussia and the French ambassador. The telegram made it appear that William I had insulted the Frenchman. A furious Napoleon III declared war on Prussia as Bismarck had hoped, and Prussia scored a quick victory. So literally, to set this up, Bismarck deliberately kind of pushes Napoleon III's buttons to get Napoleon III to declare war, but that gives him what he wants. That gives him the war and enables him to score a quick victory, overtaking some territory from France. And this leads us to the formation of the Second Reich. Pleased with the victory in the Franco-Prussian War, German princes convinced William I to take the title of Kaiser of Germany, and he was known as Kaiser Wilhelm. In January of 1871, German nationalists celebrated the birth of the Second Reich, or Empire. Bismarck drafted a new constitution that created a 2-house legislature, but the real power remained in the hands of Bismarck and Kaiser Wilhelm. Now we begin to look at how Germany began to strengthen after becoming kind of this unified Germany. So what previously we had known as Prussia now becomes known as Germany. And our learning objective here is to explain how Germany became stronger under the leadership of Bismarck. A unified German empire. After unification in 1871, the new German Empire emerged as an industrial giant. Several factors made industrialization in Germany possible, such as ample iron and coal resources, the basic ingredients for industrial development. A disciplined and educated workforce also helped the economy grow, and the German middle class created a productive and efficient society that prided itself on its sense of responsibility. Additionally, a growing population provided a huge home market for goods and a large supply of industrial workers. Economic strength. German industrialists recognized the value of applied science in developing new products like synthetic chemicals and dyes. Both industrialists and the government supported scientific research and development. The government also supported economic development. It issued a single form of currency for Germany and reorganized the banking system. The leaders of the new empire were determined to maintain economic strength as well as military power. Bismarck's foreign policy. Bismarck pursued several foreign policy goals. He wanted to keep France weak and build strong ties with Austria and Russia. On the domestic front, Bismarck was known as the Iron Chancellor. He targeted the Catholic Church and socialists. He thought that these groups posed a threat to the new German state, and he thought that the Catholics would be more loyal to the church than to the state. He also worried that socialists would undermine the loyalty of workers and turn them towards revolution. He tried to repress both groups, but the efforts failed. The Kulturkampf was a set of laws designed to weaken the role of the church. Instead, the faithful rallied to support the church. When repressing the socialists failed to work, Bismarck changed tactics and began to support social reform. And this brings us now to William II. In 1888, William II became Kaiser. He believed that his right to rule came from God, and he shocked Europe by asking Bismarck to resign. He resisted efforts to make democratic reforms. However, his government did provide many social welfare programs to help certain groups of people. The government also provided services such as cheap transportation and electricity.